It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon in the heart of downtown Atlanta, the kind of day where the city buzzed with its usual rhythm, honking taxis, murmuring sidewalks, and the occasional gust of wind slipping between towering buildings. Angela Martin stepped out of her black Cadillac Escalade, heels clicking confidently on the polished pavement as she approached the glass doors of the Westbridge Financial Building. To passers-by, she looked like a woman on a mission, and she was. Dressed in a crisp navy blue suit tailored to perfection, her hair pulled into a low chignon and a leather folder tucked neatly under her arm, Angela was the image of corporate elegance. No flashy jewelry, no loud colors, just clean lines, expensive taste, and quiet power. She had a simple task that day: make a personal withdrawal from her corporate account to fund an investment initiative, something she often did herself, preferring not to involve assistants in every detail. As she entered the bank's lobby, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and floor polish met her senses. A cool blast of air conditioning brushed against her face. The high ceilings echoed the chatter of customers and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. People waited in line, scrolling through phones, adjusting their briefcases, unaware of the small drama about to unfold. Angela walked up to the nearest counter, where a young teller greeted her with a somewhat rehearsed smile. "Good afternoon. How can I help you today?" he asked, glancing briefly at her. "I'd like to make a withdrawal," she said smoothly, handing over her ID and the pre-filled transaction slip. The teller took the documents and scanned them, his eyes flickering from the computer screen back to her ID. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of doubt, confusion, distrust. He didn't say much, just gave a polite "one moment, please," and walked away, ID still in hand. Angela watched as he approached a coworker at the adjacent counter, whispering while pointing discreetly in her direction. That coworker raised an eyebrow and then turned toward the back office. Moments later, the teller disappeared behind a frosted glass door marked "Manager." Angela remained calm, but her gut stirred. She wasn't a stranger to this. Subtle changes in body language, the double takes, the prolonged silence before service. She had lived through this before, just not here, and certainly not at her own institution. 10 minutes passed. Angela leaned slightly to the side and caught the eye of another bank employee, giving a slight, polite nod. The employee looked away quickly. No one approached. No one explained anything. She looked around. A young white man in a hoodie had just walked in, chatted with the teller, and walked out with a receipt in less than 5 minutes. An older woman in yoga pants had made a deposit and left. Still, Angela waited. Her phone buzzed, a calendar alert. She was supposed to be on a conference call in 30 minutes. But instead, she was standing in the customer service line of her own financial institution, being ignored, delayed, and profiled. She took a deep breath and calmly adjusted her jacket. 15 minutes in, a man finally emerged from the back office, late 40s, balding, gold watch. The kind of manager who projected formality with a touch of arrogance. He walked toward her with a clipboard in hand and a polite but noticeably cautious smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said. "We're just doing a quick verification check. We've had some unusual activity lately and our protocols have changed slightly." Angela raised an eyebrow. "I understand. Though I've made this kind of withdrawal before. Everything is on file. ID, signature, contact verification, all of it." "Yes, of course," he said. "But for large withdrawals like this, we sometimes require additional identification. Perhaps a second form of ID or documentation of the purpose." Angela's expression didn't shift, but inside the fire sparked. "I've banked here for years," she replied, "and I own the holding account. You'll find my name listed as a primary executive." The man nodded, but his posture remained stiff, guarded. "I'll just need to confirm that. Please wait a few more moments," he said, walking away again. Angela stood silent, but her mind was racing. She thought of the long hours she'd put into building this institution, the sleepless nights, the fight for funding, the years it took to scale Westbridge Financial into one of the most respected Black-owned banks in the Southeast. And now here she was, being interrogated like an outsider. Another 15 minutes passed. No one offered water. No one came to apologize. Instead, they avoided her gaze, afraid, perhaps, of what they'd see. Or maybe, just maybe, afraid of what they wouldn't see. Power to them didn't look like her. Angela knew the script by heart. A black woman walks into a luxury setting, requests access to her own money, gets stonewalled, the policy excuses, the manager's tone, the suspicion, the inability to recognize authority unless it's wearing the right skin. But this time, they picked the wrong woman. Angela Martin stood still, but her mind wasn't quiet. She glanced at her watch, a sleek silver Cartier with a mother-of-pearl face, a quiet nod to success earned and not flaunted. 23 minutes had passed since she handed over her ID. She hadn't moved. The people around her had come and gone, their transactions completed, their requests fulfilled, their smiles exchanged with ease. But for her, time stood still, suspended in the tension that hung heavy in the air like humidity before a storm. Her gaze drifted across the polished marble floor to the teller counter. There, the young employee who had first taken her ID stood with his back turned, speaking in hushed tones to two colleagues. Occasionally, he'd glance over his shoulder at her. Quick, furtive looks like a child. Looks. She didn't flinch. She just held it, calm, steady, composed. It wasn't the first time she'd been watched like this, but each time it cut the same. A customer, a white man in khakis and a golf shirt, walked past her toward the counter. He gave her a polite smile which she returned instinctively, though her eyes held no warmth. He approached the same teller who had kept her ID and was greeted with a handshake and a cheerful, "How can I help you today, Mr. Henderson?" His transaction was completed in under 4 minutes. Angela let out a slow breath through her nose. She wasn't angry yet, not in the surface sense. What she felt was deeper, sharper. It was the feeling of being erased while still standing in plain sight, the feeling of being scrutinized without cause, the feeling that once again her skin tone had walked into the room before she did and made people uncomfortable. Finally, the glass door opened again. The same manager from before reemerged, this time with a slightly more guarded expression, as if something had been confirmed or denied behind the scenes. He clutched a clipboard to his chest like a shield. "Miss Martin," he began, pronouncing her name with a rehearsed formality. "We're still in the process of verifying the account activity. There have been a few unusual movements in recent weeks, and we're taking every precaution. I'm sure you understand." Her voice was calm, cool. What I don't understand is why this is the first time I've ever been treated like this. I've made similar withdrawals, larger in fact, on other occasions without issue." The manager hesitated. "Yes, well, protocols have evolved. Fraud is on the rise. Identity theft. People posing as account holders. It's become complicated." Angela's eyes narrowed just slightly. "You have my ID. My signature is on file. I'm also listed as the primary holder of the account. So what exactly is complicated?" The manager shifted his stance. "We just want to be absolutely certain." "Certain of what?" she asked, this time with a touch of steel in her voice. He faltered. "Well, you know how these things are." "No," she replied sharply. "Explain it to me. Because what it looks like is that I'm being treated differently, and no one is offering a valid reason." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Angela leaned in, just slightly. "If I were a white man in a Brooks Brothers suit," she said, "would we still be having this conversation?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Angela straightened up, her voice once again measured and cool. "You're not protecting the institution, you're protecting your assumptions." A heavy silence fell between them. She turned slightly, scanning the room. She saw how employees behind the counter whispered, how one woman in HR at the glass window glanced between her and the manager. Angela knew those looks. She'd worn them herself once, years ago when she was climbing the ranks in corporate finance, back when she still believed excellence alone could overcome prejudice. But she'd learned since then. Being excellent only threatened the ones who couldn't see her worth without a resume or a title attached. And yet, despite the delay, despite the whispers, despite the subtle shame they tried to make her feel, Angela stood there, unmoved, regal, unapologetic. The manager cleared his throat. If you could provide a second form of ID, perhaps a utility bill or— I'm not here to prove myself, Angela interrupted. I'm here to access what I own. The words hung in the air, heavier than any number in her account. Angela Martin stood rooted in that marble-tiled bank lobby, but her spirit was already elsewhere, rifling through a mental Rolodex of years spent building, financing, leading, and protecting the very empire she now watched turn against her in real time. The quiet tension that had wrapped itself around the situation like invisible barbed wire had now grown taut, and something inside her had shifted. The hesitation she had shown, the restraint she'd worn like an elegant glove, was unraveling thread by thread. She wasn't just a customer anymore. That illusion had been stripped the moment they decided her presence required extra verification. She wasn't just Angela Martin, executive and professional. She was Angela Martin, CEO of Westbridge Financial Group, the founder, the owner, and the woman whose name was etched into the very charter of this institution. And now the gloves were coming off. The manager, Mr. Lowell, as his badge read, returned once more, visibly unsure. His steps were slower now, his posture less upright. Something about her gaze had unsettled him. Or perhaps it was the fact that she had pulled out her phone and begun scrolling, not in anger, but with the composure of someone checking their schedule before making a power move. He hesitated at a distance, watching her fingers dance across the screen. When she looked up again, her eyes weren't cold. They were focused, calculating. "Mr. Lowell," she said, her voice clear and cutting through the air like the sound of a judge's gavel. "Please do tell me, how long have you been manager of this branch?" The question caught him off guard. He shifted his clipboard awkwardly. A little over 3 years. Why?" Angela gave a soft nod. 3 years, so you must be familiar with the name listed on this branch's articles of incorporation." His brows furrowed. I can check the documents if needed." "No need," she replied, stepping forward slowly. The room seemed to quiet itself. "The name on that document is mine, Angela Renee Martin. I'm not just a client. I'm not just a name on the account. I'm the founder, principal shareholder, and CEO of Westbridge Financial Group, which owns this branch and 14 others across this state." The clipboard in his hands trembled slightly, a ripple of nervousness flowing through him like a cold current. His lips parted, but nothing came out. The clipboard in his hands trembled slightly, a ripple of nervousness flowing through him like a cold current. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Angela continued, her voice now lowered but sharp, like silk stretched over a blade. "While you were running unnecessary identity checks, whispering behind closed doors and stalling a verified transaction for over 45 minutes, you failed to recognize the face of the very woman who built this empire from the ground up. The very woman who signs your paycheck. And worse, you failed to recognize your bias." She paused. "Would you like me to spell that out for you, Mr. Lowell?" Behind her, a teller's jaw fell open slightly. Another bank associate dropped their pen. Somewhere at the customer service kiosk, a young intern stared as if witnessing something historic. "I didn't realize," Lowell started. But Angela raised one hand and he fell silent. "No, you didn't, and that's the problem," she said. "You didn't recognize my authority because you couldn't see past your assumptions. My appearance didn't match your mental checklist for CEO. You saw a black woman alone, withdrawing a large sum, and you defaulted to suspicion." Lowell began to stammer. "It's just policy." "Your policy is now a liability," she interrupted. "Not just to your integrity, but to this company's image, operations, and future. You've endangered this branch with your behavior." Angela reached into her leather folder and pulled out a crisp white envelope. Inside was a formal notice, already signed and prepared for delivery. She hadn't come to the bank with the intention to use it, but as the moments had passed, her decision had hardened. She handed the envelope to him slowly. "What's this?" he asked, glancing at the gold-embossed logo at the top of the letterhead. "An immediate termination letter," she replied calmly, "effective as of today." His face turned pale. "You're firing me? I'm relieving you of a responsibility you've proven you can't carry without prejudice," she said. "And I'm doing it before your bias costs this institution a lawsuit or PR disaster." The lobby went completely silent. Angela turned to the remaining staff, who now stood frozen, unsure whether to salute her, flee, or apologize. To the rest of you, she said, sweeping the room with her gaze, I built this company on principles of access, equality, and professionalism, not suspicion, not profiling, and certainly not the kind of dehumanizing treatment I received today. She took a step forward. If any of you believe you can't serve all clients with equal respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or balance sheet, then kindly submit your resignation by 5 p.m. today. Her words struck like thunder. Then she turned and began walking toward the door, calm, dignified, but unmistakably powerful. As the glass doors opened for her, the city's sounds poured in, traffic, voices, wind. But behind her, all that remained was stunned silence and the shattered illusion that her power was something invisible. Because today, she had made it undeniable. The news broke faster than wildfire in a dry forest. By the time Angela Martin had returned to her office, located in the 30th floor of a glass-paneled tower with her initials etched into the marble at the entrance, her phone was buzzing like a hive. Calls, messages, mentions, emails. Even her executive assistant, Jamal, stood outside her office door with wide eyes and a tablet filled with alerts. Ms. Martin, he said, hesitating before knocking, it's everywhere. Angela didn't answer right away. She was standing at her window, looking down at the bustling city below, its grid-like streets teeming with lives, stories, people who had no idea what kind of day she'd had. Or maybe, she thought, now they did. She finally turned to Jamal and gave a calm nod. Let it in. As the glass doors opened for her, the city's sounds poured in. Traffic, voices, wind. But behind her, all that remained was stunned silence, and the shattered illusion that her power was something invisible. Because today, she had made it undeniable. The news broke faster than wildfire in a dry forest. By the time Angela Martin had returned to her office, located in the 30th floor of a glass-paneled tower with her initials etched into the marble at the entrance, her phone was buzzing like a hive. Calls, messages, mentions, emails. Even her executive assistant, Jamal, stood outside her office door with wide eyes and a tablet filled with alerts. Ms. Martin, he said, hesitating before knocking, it's everywhere. Angela didn't answer right away. She was standing at her window looking down at the bustling city below, its grid-like streets teeming with lives, stories, people who had no idea what kind of day she'd had. Or maybe, she thought, now they did. She finally turned to Jamal and gave a calm nod. Let it in. Angela didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Instead, she took a deep breath and sat down in the leather chair behind her walnut desk. She opened her laptop, pulled up the incident footage from the bank's security cameras, footage that her legal team had already secured, and watched the whole thing unfold again, this time from the outside. From the moment she stepped through the bank doors to the second she handed Lowell the termination letter, her entire posture radiated calm authority. And now, the world was watching it unfold in clips that had already gone viral. One had 3.2 million views and counting. Another was accompanied by emotional commentary. I showed this to my daughter and said, this is what power looks like. This is how you walk when they try to erase you. Still, Angela wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Because she knew this wasn't just about her. It never had been. The moment she stood in that lobby as an invisible figure, while less qualified men received warm greetings and unquestioned service, she had been standing there as every person who had ever been doubted, disrespected, or dismissed for what they looked like rather than what they represented. Angela called a meeting with her PR team, legal advisors, and board representatives. Not for damage control, but to channel the momentum. I'm not going to just be a headline for 48 hours, she said, her voice firm. We're turning this into a campaign, a national conversation, a program. Her assistant took notes at lightning speed. The legal advisor, Claire, raised an eyebrow. Campaign, Angela? Angela nodded. Yes, we're launching Visible Wealth, a national awareness program for bias in financial institutions. Free training modules for bank staff. Scholarships for women of color entering finance, a documentary film, and mandatory unconscious bias training in every Westbridge branch by end of quarter. The room fell into stunned silence for a beat. Then one of the senior partners, a white man named Robert, cleared his throat. You really want to push this that far? Angela met his eyes directly. I've already been pushed. Now I'm pushing back. Outside, in the world beyond her windows, the public was reacting in waves. Some called her an icon, others called her a threat. Predictably, a few talking heads on cable news tried to spin the narrative, saying she had overreacted, that perhaps protocol was misunderstood, or that she leveraged her power in an inappropriate setting. But the majority saw the truth. They saw a black woman who didn't shout or protest, but who simply, gracefully, reminded the world that power doesn't always come with a loud voice. Sometimes it comes with a signature on a corporate charter, with the ability to end a career, start a movement, or reimagine a system. Angela started receiving messages from other CEOs, celebrities, and politicians. One message stood out. It was from a single mother in Detroit. Miss Martin, I've been afraid to even walk into banks because of how they look at me. But watching you, I cried. You made me believe that maybe one day we'll walk into places and be seen not as threats, but as who we really are. Thank you. Angela read it 3 times. Then she closed her eyes and sat back in her chair, not in exhaustion, but in reflection. She remembered being 12, walking into a bank with her mother to open a savings account. She remembered how her mother had dressed up in her Sunday best, how her hands shook while signing the forms, and how the bank manager never once looked her in the eye. She remembered promising herself that day, one day they'll have no choice but to see us. And now they had. Call to action. What would you do if the system you built turned against you? Angela Martin didn't just demand respect, she redefined what power looks like. In a world still blinded by bias, her story reminds us, silence isn't strength, action is. If you believe in equality, justice, and fearless leadership, hit that like button. Drop a comment below. Have you ever faced discrimination in a place where you should have been respected? Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded. Never let anyone tell you what power should look like. Subscribe for more true stories that inspire change and challenge the status quo.